absolutely gorgeous and wonderfully atmospheric, the Order 1886 is a deeply conflicted thing. Even more than its secret battle against the monsters of legend, the Order's greatest struggle is ultimately its own internal tug-of-war between telling a beautifully presented story and granting the level of interactivity we've come to expect from a game. In the end, the Order's lopsided commitment to perfecting its style and plot comes at the cost of sluggish pacing, a look-but-don't-touch world, and paint-by-numbers gunplay. On the surface, that approach pays off. The Order is thick with exquisitely detailed environments and makes a concerted effort to seamlessly merge gameplay with its many lengthy cutscenes, as it tells a generally good fantasy story. In 7 hours in developer Ready at Dawn's alternate version of London, I rubbed elbows with historical figures like legendary inventor Nikola Tesla, who equipped me with awesome-looking Victorian-themed weapons like the arc gun. I investigated the dealings of the famed East India Company and heard stories of a new serial killer called Jack the Ripper. And I did all this as the strong and reserved Sir Galahad, a member of the Victorian-era incarnation of the Knights of the Round Table. The Order does a lot right in that department. However, maintaining its scripted, linear storytelling means that when the Order must relinquish control outside of combat, it does so only enough to allow for the most basic of interactions with its world. There are long periods of restrained movement where you're meant to simply walk, taking in the sights and listening to character dialogue. It's good that it's well written, because there's no jogging allowed, and no touching anything you're not specifically told to touch. Constantly switching between gameplay and unskippable cutscenes means there's a lot of stop and start play, kind of like being in a traffic jam. Even then, there's rarely a moment of interactivity that isn't expressed with a quick-time event. They're at their best when you're trading slashes with hulking monsters, where slow reactions or imprecision will find you watching your character's throat ripped out in some impressive horror movie gore. But these moments are the exception rather than the rule, and most of it is simply pushing, pulling, turning, or flipping over items to continue along your set path. When a quick-time event won't do, the Order pushes you into disappointingly generic cover-based shooting and stealth segments against mostly boring human enemies. Fights against werewolves are absolutely the best part of its action, mostly because their hit-and-run attacks are fast and less predictable than trading shots from behind a crate. Unfortunately, the number of engagements in which your monster hunting prowess is put to the test is dwarfed by dull whack-a-mole shooting. I lost count of the times I traded small arms fire with waves of hapless guards and fodder until an ally says, "That's all of them," and it was time to move on again. The weapons look great and pack some creative punch, but we're not given a lot of interesting situations to shoot our way out of. The whole process of shooting is made even more difficult by those constant black bars at the top and bottom of the screen. They're intended to create a letterboxed, cinematic look. But when I was behind cover, I was much more interested in being able to see what was going on in the vertical space I actually had than I was about having a wider aspect ratio. That frustration led me to avoid crouching behind cover as much as possible, which just isn't in your best interest in a game like this.
Leonard! A drink! A drink, goddammit you!
The basic conflict at the heart of the Order 1886 is that considerations for a cinematic approach are prioritized above the needs of basic gameplay. The Order's best parts are contained within its stunning looks, its atmosphere, its style, which are truly fantastic. But the shallow, slow, generic, quick-time event-riddled gameplay make it feel like an experience that would have been better served by a non-interactive movie than a game. With no multiplayer, and no reason to revisit the short and stunted single-player campaign, there just isn't a lot to it. For more on the Order 1886, stick with IGN.